Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub, a somewhat improvised approach to mental health. My name is Glen, and today I'm going to talk about kindness. Before I get into that, though, for me it's really important to sometimes take a step back and do a check-in, an emotional check-in on what's going on. Because if I don't bring it up, it's going to show up in different ways, whether it's my mental energy, whether it's physically, it manifests itself differently. So I always advocate, do a check-in with yourself. You may want to share it with others. And today I'm just going to do an example of that because it is holding me back from being kind, because there's a lot of stuff going on in this world that I am concerned about. And this morning it really came to me. I am concerned about something that was said on somebody else's podcast recently. I know this individual, and it was defamatory. Very upsetting for me. I'm trying to deal with it. There is a bird that continues to peck at our windows constantly. We put up a bear carving and it disappeared, but now it's pecking on a different window. So this bird is really persistent. For about a month, it's been trying to get in. I have a neighbor whose dog is barking constantly. I have the climate around me that's changing. We're on stage 4 water restrictions where I live, and I am worried because we've had barely any rain over the last 2 months. We've had a dry spell for at least 3 weeks, no rain at all, and there's none in the forecast, and there's fires raging around us. There's a lot to be upset about, so I'm checking in with some sadness about all that. And it's okay. Now, what can I focus on? That's what brings me to today's podcast, kindness. I had a lovely week away with friends on an island called Hornby Island, and I met a lovely lady at a restaurant we were at in her early 20s who we got to know really well just through her openness, her transparency, her passion, her purpose. And what struck me, and I think what got this conversation going with this server at this restaurant, was she had this tattoo of a tarot card, and the tarot card was the Hanging Man, which is a tree, and there's somebody hanging upside down by one of their ankles, hanging there. And in tarot readings, it depicts self-sacrifice. She looks at it differently. She said, this card for me represents the importance of sometimes looking at things upside down. We all have our ways of seeing the world, which can take us away from being in the present moment, where we set expectations, where we add meaning to things, versus if you can just turn yourself upside down every so often, you see the world differently. And I loved that. I thought it was so great. And she got into how part of her work is to help young adults and young children get through life. And she said there's a lot they're concerned about. They're concerned about social media, this whole comparison thing that we're in, trying to keep up with everybody else, trying to be popular. Wow, when I think of social media, it is a popularity contest. And I've talked about this in different episodes, but kids are struggling with that because somebody might have more likes, or somebody gets the attention, or we're trying to compare what we have versus with what others have. There is the environment and climate change. What's going to happen to our future? Our kids kind of know what's going on out there. How are they ever going to afford a house? Look what our parents did to the environment. Doesn't seem like anybody cares. Listening to her was so enlightening because she clearly gets it. She knows what's going on. She's seeing the impact of our world on kids. And then I think now about ChatGPT and the impact that's having on people. There's a writer's strike going on in North America. Writers are worried that technology is going to take over their jobs. And yeah, they should be worried. I think there's a lot of people that should be worried, and this is just the beginning. Who knows what's going to happen next? But all these things are happening. And when I consider this, the one thing we have left is our humanism, is treating each other with respect, with dignity, like we're a somebody. I'm no different than many others out there. I focus on sometimes what's not working in this world versus what is working in this world. Focus on being negative about other people versus thinking positively about other people, worrying about the environment. And there's things I can't control out there. And there's things that I can influence. And there's things that I can control. A great thing to do is to take a moment and write down, what are all those things that I am concerned about, that I'm worried about, those people that I'm unkind to, or the ones that I talk about. Just create a list of all your negativity. What is dragging you down? So on my list, I've already listed a few. What's dragging me down is the defamation thing that I shared with you. What's dragging me down is some of the work that I need to get done around my house. Some of the proposed work that my wife would like us to do on the house is dragging me down. What else am I being negative about? Certain individuals in my life, I'm definitely being negative about. The climate, the lack of water, what I perceive as sometimes ignorance in others in doing their part around helping preserve our climate. That's dragging me down. The bird knocking at my window, the barking dog next door. Social media is dragging me down. In fact, I took myself off Facebook. I'm still on Facebook, but I don't have it on my phone anymore. I removed it because that was dragging me down, just always comparing and contrasting. And all this kind of stuff is taking me away from the present moment. When we create a list like that, we can now look at it and say, well, what are those things that I need to let go of? Well, I need to let go of my concern about the climate. Yeah, our forests are burning, and I can do my part, and I can lead by influence. So one thing I did a few weeks ago is I put a post on our local networking site and asked people to share their advice in terms of what can we do to reduce water consumption. And some great ideas came up. But then what happened was this unkindness started to unfold as well through this. And that's the power of social media, is unkindness. Like, things came out saying, well, the regional district should not approve all the home builds. Well, hello, we live here. But it wasn't solution oriented, and it just shows how easy it is for us to focus on what's not working and being unkind versus thinking, well, okay, well, here's what's going on. What action can I take? And yeah, I do the same thing at times, but I become more action oriented. If something comes up for me, I say, okay, well, what can I do about it? And I do it. So I can clear it off my plate and move to the next thing. So what we've been doing with our water consumption is, for our shower and our dishwater, we'll save that water that runs before it gets warm and use that for the garden. So these are things we can do. So I'm doing my part. That's kindness. And in today's world where it seems like it's very individualistic, if I focus on my list of what is dragging me down and think about, well, what can I do to be not only kind to myself, but kind to others? What actions can I take? That leads to more gratitude. It leads to more action orientation. It leads to less complaining, bickering, divide, anger, upset. And I hear it all the time, just around our local governments not doing this, the federal government's not doing this, this is what's happening in another country, it is so wrong. And I'm not saying we shouldn't look at things being wrong or right. It is what it is. But if there's nothing we can do about something, what is complaining getting for us other than this self-desire we might have to be right about things? Climate change is a typical common example of this, that people know there's climate change now, it's happening. And there's this discussion and debate on what's causing it. Well, the science is out there, everybody, and regardless of what you think, it doesn't really matter. We're dealing with it now. We're dealing with the impact of climate change. What are some solutions? Even small solutions can make a huge difference. But if we spend time being negative about it, or saying that's not the right solution, or that's not going to work, or that's not going to work, or it's their fault, they're doing it, they should do something first, we're no further ahead. We're just perpetuating unkindness. And I hear this happening in organizations as well. And I think we've been through a lot of stuff, everyone, and we need to be aware of that. We've been through a COVID pandemic. There's been a lot of fear. That stuff builds up. That's why we're seeing signs at many public locations, even private retailers, saying, be kind to our staff. Many of us are just lashing out on other people. For what reason? Why can't we just take a step back before we choose to respond or talk about somebody and say, what can I say instead that would be a kind thing to say, versus finding faults in others? And that kind of stuff is sometimes fun to talk about. But then it can go on and on and on. Because we like to be right about other people. And I'll do this. I'll say, oh yeah, so-and-so is being like this. Yeah, they are. Okay, yeah, I knew that was the case. Where does it get me? I don't know. Just breeding more unkindness. And it's just growing in popularity, this unkindness. So by creating a list of what is negative in your life, you can then focus on, okay, what are those things I can't control at all? And then just try to remove them from your list. But the key thing here is take action. In any given moment, if you feel like you're focusing on something that is unkind, maybe stop yourself and say, the unkind Glen would do this, or say this. What would the kind Glen do? Now, to me, this doesn't mean not holding people accountable. This is another thing that I think as Canadians, I see too much of, is we can let go of things, but inside we are unkind about people. And here's an example. In my area that I live, there are people that rent out their suites or their houses. They don't live in those houses, and they are doing something illegal, because what's happening is it's having an impact on others. Maybe they're partying too much. Who knows? But obviously the same care and attention somebody has for an accommodation is not there if you're just renting it versus owning it. So they have certain laws in place for reasons. And sometimes people complain about these laws, but folks, they do the laws for a reason, and maybe consider, I wonder why they're doing it versus they shouldn't be doing it. There's reasons for everything. Remember, human beings work for the government. They're going to make certain decisions, and they try to be very well informed in those decisions, because there is a huge impact if they're not. So it's a very collaborative decision-making process in a lot of situations. So instead of complaining about something, understand there's a reason for it. What is that possible reason? But what's happening is people are not holding these individuals accountable, or they're not necessarily contacting the government to let them know so-and-so is doing this. Like, there's people that are watering when they shouldn't be watering. And this is, maybe people are being kind to themselves. I want to save my trees. I want to save my plants. And I'm selfish in a sense, and I'm not thinking about, I wonder what the impact is on others. We've grown from a community-based society way back in the past where we're all kind of part of, and I love this analogy, it's a First Nations analogy, just around we're part of the tribe. And as part of the tribe, we all need to work together to ensure that we survive and have our interests in mind, our mutual interests in mind. In today's society, I don't see a lot of that. back in these tribes, if somebody wasn't following the rules that was set up, and this is a way of looking at government, then they would be kicked out of the tribe. Hey, that makes sense. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, then you have to pay the consequences. And there's some countries that do this really well. I'll use Germany as an example. Their people follow the rules, and as a result, Germany is very proactive in many respects. They're very efficient. They get things done. And the challenge I find around kindness sometimes is we're so kind, we don't want to offend other people or let other people know that they're doing the wrong things, but we then talk about it to other people that they should be doing that. So we're being unkind to others, we're complaining about others. So what's better, holding people accountable and letting them know, hey, this is the rule, you're not doing it, versus trying to do the kind thing, but really it's being unkind because we're, again, talking about people behind their back. So there's things like this that go on. So I want you to evaluate those situations in your life. Where can you apply more kindness to? And let me try to use a personal example here of how this applies to me. There is somebody that I know that I haven't seen for a while, and I spoke to another individual about this person, and I shared with him, this is the situation, and what he said, you know what, Glenn, maybe meet with them. Try to connect with them, because obviously you haven't seen them in a while, to discuss what's going on and try to rekindle the relationship. And I did that. Had them over, had a great time. We're not hearing anything from them. And for me to let that go, I think that would be the kind thing to do, is not talk about them anymore, because I do talk about them at times, and I don't think that's healthy. Well, I know it's not healthy. And just to let it go. People have their reasons for doing what they're doing, and I am going to stop talking about them because it's breeding unkindness. So by me complaining about somebody to other people, what is happening is I'm spreading the unkindness, and then they'll start being unkind. It's like a virus. So what are these small things in life that you can stop doing and focus on being kind? And again, not at the expense of loving and being peaceful with everything. No, we can't be peaceful with everything. There's no progress or there's no change. If we just said, oh, we'll be kind to everything, there are consequences there. But there might be something that's dragging you down, or you drag other people down with the same type of conversations. Maybe it's something about a family member. Maybe it's about a political event. Maybe it's about a leader. Maybe it's about an actor, somebody in the public realm that's having an impact. And to think, what would be the kind thing to do? Again, we have a lot to be concerned about. If we can just hang ourselves upside down at times and try to look at things differently from different perspectives, new answers may emerge. Folks, we're only here for a certain amount of time. I can be a very negative person. It's not helping me. If I can focus on being kind, what I would get out of it is a higher level of assertion. I would be able to listen more effectively to people and be there in the moment. I noticed this morning with a conversation I had with one of my neighbors, I focused on something negative, and it got me out of my listening with them. We're talking about ChatGPT and the impact it was having, and I got stuck in my own head and my negativity around this technology and the impact it could have on the world. And it was unkind thinking. And if I can let go of that unkind thinking, I will be able to be there with others, to see the best in others, to see the best in myself. Sometimes I get nervous about what I'm going to say, but if I can lead with my heart, and for my heart to be a place of kindness, and believe in the world, believe in others, see the best in others, see the best in myself, I'm going to reduce the hurt. I'm going to reduce the pain. I'm going to reduce the anxiety. I'm going to reduce the stress. I'm going to optimize my mental health and create a world of kindness and compassion versus disgust, anger, and disappointment. Folks, be proactive in your life. What are those things you're stumbling on? What action needs to be taken? And do it. Thanks for listening.